Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Brought to you by Mind Architecture. Building worlds for your mind.
Today on Discovered Wordsmith, I have Sasscer Hill. Sasscer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah,
Glad
great.
to be here.
Good. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about your book. But before we delve into that, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you live, and what you like to do besides writing.
I am living in Aiken, South Carolina. I moved down from Maryland 12 years ago, which is where I did most of the horse business I was involved in for 32 years. And then I came here because it is a horse area, and I knew it'd be a very favorable area for me to stick around with horsey people and see horses. And it's also a dog town. And I love dogs, and it's every other car that goes by has a dog with its head sticking out the window. So it's really a nice town.
Nice. And when you say horse business, what exactly were you doing?
I was breeding, foaling, raising, breaking thoroughbred racehorses. And I was also an owner who raced them. And I did that for 32 years.
Wow. Okay. I would expect there's some horses in your books sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Or horse racing murder mysteries, the ones that have been out. And actually, they're rather traditional mysteries. They have a little bit of blood and guts in them, nothing too strong. But now I'm trying my hand at a few cozy novellas because they're quick and easy to write. And cozy mysteries are so popular right now. So I thought,
Yeah.
why not see if we can get a little bit of that income as well as what I usually write. So it's been
Nice.
fun.
Okay, let's delve into that, talk about your books a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about Murder at the Willcotts Hotel.
Yes.
And this is not your first book, is that correct?
No, it's like maybe number 9.
Okay, so are these in a series or are they just separate individual books?
Most of them have been. My first series is a 5-book series about a gal named Nikki Latrelle, female jockey, very young. The next series I wrote, if you want to call it that, was a 2-book deal for St. Martin's, featuring a really strong female character named Fia McFee. But years ago, when I was in a Sisters in Crime group that I met, and we were doing critiques. This is when I was still up in Maryland. The Sisters in Crime Chessie chapter, that was my chapter, wanted to do a bunch of collections of mysteries. So anthologies. So I wrote 2 anthologies for two different stories for two different anthologies. And they did quite well. And they were both about a gal named Janet Simpson. And she was a middle-aged, if not beyond middle-aged, female sleuth. And they were actually cozy books. And everybody said, we'd like to see more of this. But then I rushed right back into racehorses and people fighting with drugs and fighting. When you have horse racing that has the amount of money that's in it, there's a lot of room for graft and corruption. So my characters were always fighting that. They were always on the side of thoroughbred racing. But Janet's great. She's my older character. She is like somebody out of a Mary Higgins Clark book. She's smart and attractive and does everything right and never did anything wrong like my other characters. And she had a domineering father, so she was sheltered. And then she married a domineering husband. And although she loved him dearly, he never gave her much freedom, and she always wanted a racehorse, but she was never allowed to buy one. And he finally passed away. And suddenly she's an extremely wealthy woman who's naive, and has very little world experience. And that gets her into all kinds of problems that only she needs her wits to get away from con men who want her money and that sort of thing. So those are the Janet Simpson books.
Okay. And where does the Willcotts Hotel book fall in that set of books?
The first two in the set are just the short stories I wrote for the anthologies. So this is, you could call it story or book number 3. And it takes place at the actual Willcotts with an X on the end hotel.
Ah, okay.
Which is a 5-star, very well-known hotel, very popular visiting place, and people come. And it's also near Augusta, where they have the Masters golf tournament every year. And they have people from Australia that book 5 years in advance. And this town goes wild when they have the Masters because we're just like a 35-minute drive. So that's fun. And Janet she's amazed when she gets to the hotel to discover that all these different people stayed there, especially Franklin Roosevelt, who had an affair with a woman and would come down by train, and the train would mysteriously break down when it arrived at the Willcotts Hotel.
Nice.
Oh, amusing.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So are there horses in this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when her husband died, she got herself a racehorse finally.
Okay, so she's okay, cool. And so I'm going to jump a little bit here. A lot of times they say for authors, write what you know. So is that why you wanted to write these books? Why did you choose mysteries for this type of book? And did you put the horses in there? Could you have done something else? Dogs or just whatever? Because it sounds a little bit like Jessica Fletcher. Every time she wakes up, there's somebody having a mystery to solve.
Yeah, since I was involved in the horse racing industry for 32 years, and I loved it, and I know the horses so well, and I spent a lot of time on the backstretch and got to see the underbelly of horse racing. It was a natural. And I've always loved mysteries. It's always been my favorite genre. So it was just, and as a teenager, I read everything Dick Francis ever wrote because I loved his books, his horse racing murder mysteries. They were great books. And so I was drawn in that direction for sure.
Okay, yeah. And what are people saying about the stories that I've read up so far?
They like them. They like the Janet books. And this book is not actually supposed to come out. It's hard to explain until October 1st, but it is available for pre-order. And of course, I sent a couple of copies around, and people that read them loved them. And I got 2 excellent reviews. But it's a hard business. There's like 1 million cozies out, and everybody's clawing their way to try to get to the top. It's a tough business.
Are there any other books out there that you could think of that the stories and the writing is similar to yours?
Dick Francis very much, but also a lot of people say that if Dick Francis and Janet Ivanovich had a daughter, it would be Sasscer Hill, because my books have a lot of humor in them. I love humor, not slapstick or anything like that, but just the occasional one-liner that my heroine will think that's very amusing. And people have laughed out loud sometimes reading my books. I also write a lot like Sue Grafton. I always loved her, and I loved her style. So I guess that would be similar. But my favorite authors and books that I think I do sound like, even though it might be very ignorant of me to say this, but I love Michael Connelly, Robert Craze. Robert Parker was my first. I loved Robert Parker. And of course, Sue Grafton, and I do tend to prefer male writers. Most of the female writers, they're always talking about food and babies, and that just doesn't interest me. That doesn't interest me at all. So most of the female mystery writers, they have to have a mother and a child in there to really get the tension up. But I don't think you need to do that. I think there's plenty of ways to get tension.
And sometimes a dog.
Sometimes a dog, although I haven't written a dog book, but I probably will.
Yeah, horses, you always see dogs on the horse farms and roaming around and that. So it does seem to fit. I agree.
They do. They go together hand in glove.
Yeah, my daughter was taking horse riding lessons, so I've done my
Is
share
she?
of leading horses and cleaning stalls and all that. Not
Oh,
racing them, but
yeah.
so
Yeah, but that's good.
Sir, your book, so it's the Willcotts Hotel. Would you like to see this or the series turned into movies or a TV show if you had a choice?
TV shows, because I think that things that are streaming now are doing better. I think I watch a lot of the mysteries on the British mysteries on Acorn and the other one, which escapes me at the moment. And I really enjoy those. And a lot of them are like an hour and a half, and then they'll have a second one. Here comes the next chapter. Since books, you have chapters and they're ongoing, and all those mysteries for so many years, starting way back with, what was it? The cop book in New York, PD Blue. They always had ongoing series within the story. Each story
Right.
stood alone, and I think that's a great thing to do. And I think you can do that when you stream. I don't see movies being something that's going to happen to or for me. Most people have said, oh, your book should be a movie, or why aren't you on TV? I don't understand why you're not on TV. And I always say, you have to know somebody that knows somebody. And then I always look at them and I go, do you know anybody? And they always go, no. It's hard. I did have a producer agent for a while. Sisters in Crime did a whole thing that was Hello Hollywood, and we went out there and we actually met some people that could
Oh,
have
cool.
possibly put our books into TV or movies, but that's something you need to work at. And just one trip out to Hollywood and then getting on a plane and going home is not going to do it. I don't
Right.
think.
Right.
You're incredibly lucky.
Or if you like happen to have a real murder in your town, and so the news agencies want to talk to you because you're the local murder writer, now you're in the spotlight and suddenly someone wants to talk to you.
No, and I'm right across the river from Georgia, and half the people in Hollywood have moved to Georgia to
Yeah,
film.
it's
It's so
big.
much cheaper.
Yeah,
So I'm like, hi, I'm right here.
yeah, back in the day, it seemed like British Columbia and up in Canada, there was a lot, Vancouver, there's a lot of movies and
I think
TVs
there
filmed
still
up there.
are.
Yeah, there
I
still
think
are.
there
And now
still
it's Georgia. I live close to Cleveland, and part of some of the Marvel movies were filmed up there, like the first Avengers, there were sections
really.
of it. But I don't know what happened. It seemed like there was a 5-year time period where we were getting tons of movies and then it just died. The latest movie, A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks, there's a train scene and that happened right here at the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. So there's still some, but you know, it's weird. The big bucks I could bring in, but then the government or the city doesn't want to give so many breaks, or they don't want, and they lose that. And Georgia's been just hammering it.
Yeah, that's because they're favorable. It's all about the money, and those producers and filmmakers, they're going to go where they make the most money. And if they go somewhere and they're making a lot of money, and then suddenly there's politics get involved and people are shutting them down a little bit, they're out of there. They don't
Right.
need to be there. They'll go someplace else.
Yep. All right, that's what are your plans for your next book or series?
I'm going to stick with the Janet Simpson books just for a little bit. The book that's actually all but finished, I'm just writing the epilogue now, is called Murder in the Bluegrass, and that takes place in Kentucky. And that, I think, that's a good book. I'm very pleased with it. It's another novella. And at the very end of the book, the trainer for Janet Simpson says, I'm taking the horses back to Aiken because there's a huge training center here. And that's why the first book takes place at the Willcotts Hotel, because Janet comes down here to watch her horse get broken and learn how to do all the things that horses need to do, because there's a beautiful training track right here in Aiken. And so the trainer says, we're going to take these horses. They're young. They're just 2-year-olds. We're going to take them back to Aiken, let them grow up a little bit. And then this summer, if they're ready, we're going to Saratoga. So one of the characters in the book says, looks like we're going to Saratoga next. And so, I mean, it was a perfect setup. So that's where the next book will take place.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it's a little foreshadowing without being a cliffhanger. Nice. So I was going to ask this earlier, I forgot. Do you find that other horse people, horse racing people, farm, that they're attracted to your books, or is it still mostly just people that like mysteries and just so happens that yours have horses and they're enjoying it?
The horse people love my books. In fact, I won the Ryan Award. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If you've ever heard of Ireland's Ryanair, it's a huge concern. It's an airline, and Dr. Tony Ryan decided that there should be an award given to writers of thoroughbred racing books, be they fiction or otherwise. And I was just amazed that I went out there and won this award. And I was up against Felix Francis, Dick Francis's son. And that was big competition. And my story won. Nice. And that was great. And you get a $10,000 book award.
Nice.
Now, the Edgars don't pay you anything except for that you get sales. But that was so exciting. That was one of the most exciting nights of my life. I might have had too much to drink, but it was really fun.
I don't think there's a law actually that about getting on a horse if you're drunk. You can't drive when you're drunk. If the horse can get you home, isn't that what they used to do? Put them on the horse, let them take them home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So if your books were turned into movies or TV shows, just about every profession hates seeing movies with some of their profession in it because it's never 100% right. There's always liberties they take for the fiction in that. Computers back in the day, they used to not even have wires hooking anything up. And they would show somebody typing one line in the keyboard and it would do 2 million things. That's just not how it works. And cops complain all the time.
No.
You would deal with them just getting things wrong about horse racing, or do you think you might be able to consult and help make sure that's more accurate?
I would hope that they would let me do that. I know about what you just said about cops. I went to something called Writers Police Academy on 2 different occasions.
Oh, I heard about that recently.
Yeah. And then you meet these guys that are just brilliant police, anything from FBI to CIA to DEA, they're all there. And they want you to call them up and ask them questions. And I do. I'll be writing a book and I'll say, is this that I've written, does this sound realistic to you? And they'll go, yeah. Mm-hmm. But as far as the horses go, a lot of the good reviews I've gotten have been people writing, I am so sick of reading horse books where the author has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Not so with Sasscer Hill. She really knows her stuff. That's because I was in the business for 32 years. I guess I know my stuff. I should. So anyway, yeah, I think, but as far as everybody I've talked to who's had a movie done or anything like that, it's gotten better. It's gotten different. You have Michael Connelly, who's now producing and completely involved in his movies. And the more that happens, the better it is, because a lot of authors have told me in the past, this was in the last 10 years, just take the money and don't even watch the movie because you will hate it. So I don't know. It would be interesting to find out. I'd love to find out.
And I think, though, that sentiment is changing a bit because I think the studios are finding that if they're if they stay to the heart of the story. I understand an 800-page Stephen King novel is not going to fit into a 2-hour movie and they have to strip it down. But if the heart of it is there and the main parts of it are there, it's a much better received movie that people enjoy it. It does well. But when they cut the author out and cut the material down and change it so much, people don't enjoy it as much. So I think that is changing, that sentiment of take the money and shut up. That Stephen King says that all the time. I don't care what they do. They paid me, they bought the rights, do whatever they want. I've still got my books. And that's been the overall. But I think that is changing, that they want to be more accurate to what the source material is.
Yeah, it's definitely changed with Michael Connelly and Lee Child. He's been involved in his Jack Reacher books.
Yep.
And that's good. That's good.
Jack Reacher is a great example because the movies with Tom Cruise were not received. Maybe they made money or not, I'm not sure, but they just weren't talked about received. But the TV show that Prime did, Amazon Prime, I thought was great and was very accurate.
Well, they had a a big guy.
He was a big guy. Yeah. But what I loved about the Lee Child books is I just read last year my first Lee Child books. And what I loved about him was his style of writing is so different than others. There's short sentences, short words. He doesn't use long sentences, doesn't use big words. He doesn't go into flowery descriptions. It's fast paced all the way through.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Yeah. And it
That's
just
why
keeps
I
you turning.
prefer male. That's why I prefer the way men write, because it's the women who usually go off into these long flowery things about, I don't know what.
And Stephen King. Stephen King likes to go on and
I
on.
don't read Stephen King. I just think the guy's kind of weird and I don't really like his books that much.
Yeah.
I got stuck in a revolving door with him one time and his wife at the Edgars in New York. And
Really?
it was so funny because he had been the master of ceremonies. And we got in this revolving door. It was pouring down raining and it wouldn't move. It got stuck. And I thought, I'm stuck in a revolving door with Stephen King. And his wife said, Stephen, that wasn't so bad, was it? Because he doesn't like that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then we got out. They got in a beautiful limo that pulled up and put them on. I got into a taxi cab that had in the back seat was sopping wet and I sat on a wet seat. But we went on down the street and we pulled up next to them in traffic. And I'm not making this up. I looked over. He has a flask and he is just downing it. And I'm thinking, even it's getting better now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that. And
It was crazy.
I believe that he doesn't like that stuff. He has that, and that's part of his writing is that down home, aw shucks, good old boy type writing. And I think his personality himself. I think that's hilarious. Of course, getting stuck in an elevator that or a revolving door that won't move sounds like a Stephen King short story.
I know. That's just what I thought. I thought that. And I'll tell you one other interesting Stephen King thing. I had a horse trainer for years who was from Maine. And when he was a little kid in school, Stephen King taught them music lessons. He was a teacher.
Right.
And he would bring in these little magazines. And what they were was like Alfred Hitchcock mystery magazines. And he would read out loud from them and he would say, someday I'm going to be in one of these magazines. How cool is that?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned one of your favorite authors a little earlier. What are some of your favorite books and authors?
I love the Lee Child books, and I'm trying to think, because we've talked about that. I'm trying to think if there's, well, way back in the day, there was a book called The Far Pavilions, which I thought was one of the best books I've ever read. And it was written by a woman, and they made that into a movie. And it was a good movie. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
No, I
But
haven't.
it took place in India, and it was a fascinating story. But there's so many good books. There's so many good books, and it's hard. I'm trying to think, who do I like recently? Oh gosh, what's his name? There's a new author out. He writes about a guy who has a little bit of post-traumatic stress syndrome. And he hears like a noise in his head all the time. And I'm so sorry to bring it up because I can't remember the name of the author at the moment, but he's very good and he's newer. So I would say he's a favorite. And Craze, I mentioned Craze, but his book, Suspect, is just the best book. And it's actually about one of the main characters is a dog. And
Cool.
an ex-army dog that has post-traumatic stress syndrome because his handler and everybody got blown up. So the dog's always screwed up. And the cop in the book is screwed up because his partner was killed and he's really a mess. And they find each other and they heal each other. And the dog trainer is really worried about this dog. And he says, I think the dog is a little bit suspect. And that's why he named it Suspect. It's a great book. I think anybody that loves a good mystery with action and excitement and loves dogs would really enjoy that book.
Nice. Okay. So have you discovered any bookstores down there that you love?
The only one we have, because I live in Aiken, we don't have a bookstore in Aiken. I go to Augusta, Georgia to the Book Tavern, and it's a really nice little down home, cute bookstore, and the guy that owns it is great. And he's been very kind to me and sold some of my books.
Nice.
So it's a nice bookstore, but it's not, there's a Barnes and Noble, but I don't even go in there. I just, not really, they're not personalized at all.
Okay. So before we talk a few author things, Sasscer, if someone on the street, your hometown, saw you and said, hey, I just heard that you write Cozy Mysteries. Why should I get your book and read it? What would you tell them?
Oh, I would say it's because in all my books, I have never wanted to write the great American novel. I want to entertain and give you something that's maybe a little bit scary, a little bit funny, but always is a destination for a place to escape and be informed. And also they are informative books because I always write about things about horses that people don't have any idea, and they learn a lot. So I do enjoy doing that. And I would say that's why you would read them, because I want to entertain you. And I want to talk to you about chasing the dream, fighting the odds, and helping the helpless. Those are some of that's probably the theme, the basic theme in every story I've ever written. I think that's so important.
Nice.
And my own personal mantra, which is also reflected in the books, is stay strong and march on. Just keep going.
Nice. Okay, great. All right. Let me ask you a few author things we'll chat a little bit about. So you've written a series now. You said 9 books. What are some things that you've learned over that time that you're doing different now than you used to do?
When I started out, I always got great grades in creative writing, but that doesn't mean you know how to write a mystery novel. Anything but. And I do have a first book that's in a drawer where it belongs. And I didn't have any help. And I remember one of the big gals in Sisters in Crime, when I met her at a meeting, she's one of the first authors that was a member of Sisters in Crime. And I'm so sorry, I can't think of her name right now. But she was shocked when I told her that I didn't join Sisters in Crime because I just felt like I wasn't good enough and that I wouldn't fit in and all these sorts of things. And she was like, it never even occurred to her that anybody would feel that way. And I think a lot of budding authors are terrified. Why wouldn't you be terrified? All people do is criticize and find things wrong with it. And then the ghouls that do reviews, oh my God, these people are awful. So I think a lot of writers, the one thing I learned was to get support, to join groups like Sisters in Crime. I would urge any author to do that. If you write romances, join Romance Writers of America, because these people will help you. They'll listen to you. They'll listen to what you've written, and they will support you. And that's so important, because without support, you're nowhere.
Yes, exactly. And it helps you feel better, because a lot of people, that, oh, I'm not a good writer. And then you get people telling you, oh, we all feel that way. And you say, I love this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That support helps a lot. You mentioned the Sisters in Crime several times. And before we started recording, you were talking about you meet with them through Zoom like we are now. And when you and I first jumped on, I usually use Zencastr, and we had some trouble with that. So we switched over to Zoom. So it's a totally different world as far as authors go and the meetings. And over the weekend, I mentioned I went to an author panel in Pittsburgh. There was a festival of books, and JD Barker was there, and he goes, wow, it's so good to see some people that aren't Zoom people. But that has changed things. So do you guys meet over Zoom, or do you do face-to-face, or what do you do with that?
Since I left the DC area, Maryland, my group was the Chesapeake chapter. And they're great. Oh my God, those gals have won more awards than you can shake a stick at. They cleaned up in the Edgars. Some of them were winning Edgars, and gosh, I can't think of what the other big award is. And I just was having to congratulate them all. One of the gals that used to be in my class has won every award there is to win for her short stories. And Barb Goffman, she's very good writer. And it's hard not to be there with them. I used to go to Bethesda, Maryland, where we would all meet, and it was a writing school. There's no such thing like that in Aiken. There's just, you have to be in a big city, in a big, you know.
Yep.
And I miss that, although I don't miss being in the DC area. So it's an
interesting thing, because I know I'm a very much an introvert. And a lot of times I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want to be around people. And that's what Zoom makes really well, because there's a lot of conferences now that you can watch via Zoom or participate via Zoom, and meetings. I was in a mastermind for a while where it was people from all over the country, and we met every week at the same time, and I could see, made friends and could see everybody because of Zoom. But there's something different about when you go live and you're face to face with people. And I'm doing a retreat this weekend with people live face to face. But I guess the new technology gives you that ability to stay with a group, even if you move out of the area, or be in a group. The closest city for me, big city, Cleveland, is an hour away. So that's a one-way hour drive to do any meeting, which becomes very difficult to do very often, but it's much easier to jump on Zoom. So I think it's changing how we as authors work with each other, or things like these meetings right here. That wouldn't have been as easy years ago. Would have had to just be over the phone, recorded on a little tape recorder. There's good and bad with it, definitely.
Yep.
Have you done any conferences or anything via Zoom or watching video?
I have done a few, but I don't like them as much as the real thing. I really miss going to BoucherCon. But since my husband and I are getting older, we're trying to survive on Medicare. What's the other one?
Social Security.
Thank you. Yes, you see what happens when you get older. It's terrible. And I don't have the money that I used to have. I can't afford to. I can't go to any meeting that's going to cost me less than $2,000 between the plane, the hotel, and the food. And it's just so expensive. I can't do it anymore. And I miss BoucherCon. I have my annual picture of Lee Child and me. And I have 4 or 5 of them, pictures of me and Lee Child. And that was so much fun. And me and Michael Connolly and me and a lot of these gals that are very popular right now. I miss that. And sitting at the bar and having a drink with some of these people. Now that's just terrific. You really meet people and get to know them if you're sitting at a bar and just having a light drink, and everybody's staying in the same hotel and nobody has to drive anywhere. And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's so expensive.
Yes. And the flight, the driving, the hotels, it's all gone up. Which I'm okay. Yeah, I know it always does, but it seems like it's jumped higher, faster recently.
Yeah, with the inflation, of course it has.
And for me, I write middle grade. So one of my aspects of marketing is visiting schools and talking to kids. That's fine for schools within a certain radius around me, but I'm not going to be going to a school down in Georgia like on a Wednesday. It's a long flight, or a car drive. It's not feasible. So schools really only get the authors that are local, except for now we've got Zoom, and there's a lot of authors that do Zoom meetings with the kids, and the schools can get many more authors. And I'm not saying it's only about the money, but it's easier for me to jump on a Zoom call for half hour and then get right back to what I was doing, rather than trying to drive and meet up at a certain time, etc. And so the schools can get more authors in, and authors of their choice. So that's the technology there has definitely benefited something like that. Yes, I will say.
It has. Yes, it has. Definitely.
And I know, like you mentioned the con, but I'm not familiar with that one. But a lot of the cons offer both live and video to some people that I can go to 1 or 2 this year, and then I can do 5 of them on Zoom or something like that.
Right.
So you can still do it, maybe.
Yeah, I still meet with the Chessie chapter gals up in DC on Zoom, because I miss some of those gals. I knew them for years, so it's fun to see them.
And it's interesting, like my mother's a retired nurse, and she gets together once a month with some of her friends for lunch, and they do that. But there's a couple of them that have moved away with retirement, and they're like, well, I can't go. But my kids, their generation, they're going to be so used to video everything that it's like, it won't matter. Oh, okay, you move so-and-so, we'll just dial you in, or whatever it is at the time, that they'll hologram sitting in the chair next to them. They'll be able to join and be a part of that. So it keeps the communities that you like and the people you get along with. You don't have to always just say goodbye.
Yeah, doesn't that sound sad? Always have to say goodbye. That sounds like a line in a song.
It probably is. If we looked it up, I bet it would be there.
I bet it would be.
Sasscer, I appreciate you getting on and chatting today. Your book sounds very fun with horses, which I love horses. I don't have any at the moment, but I still love horses. I'd love to go riding again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I would too. I miss it. I miss it.
Yeah, do you have any horses of your own now?
No, not now. We sold the farm. We sold everything. We lost everything in 2008 with that market crash that happened. And moved down here because my God, everything's so much cheaper down here. It's like it's 30% of what it was in Maryland near DC.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
everything except for food.
And there's another benefit right there. You can write remotely. You can get on meetings and stuff remotely. So I've been doing a talk for parents with middle school kids saying, we are not preparing them for what the future is bringing. They're not going to be ready. We're not showing them how to use the tools that they've got now, let alone stuff 10 to 15 years from now for their life. I make the point in the talk that as a database administrator, something I've done, if you wanted a job with a big company, you had to go to a big city. And now you don't. Now you can do the same job remote because everything's through remote computers anyway, whether I'm there or here. And I showed the differences. If I'm making, let's say, 100,000 a year, a little 0.7 acre, or 1 bedroom, 4-room house in Chicago is like 420,000. But in my area, the same day, it was a 4 acre, 6-7 room house with 2 bedrooms, and it was like 120,000. And if I was making $100,000, but living remote, my costs are less. So I just think our kids aren't getting prepared for it because the adults don't necessarily understand how that works nowadays. So I think raising horses, you can't do remotely. That's the problem. So some jobs you can, not raising horses and training them, but those are the types of jobs that are going to need specialized people that know what they're doing too. So that's where our world's changing. Using this remote and video stuff is changing the world drastically. And now with the AI and 5G phones and all sorts of things, you won't even know when somebody's not in a New York office, that they're living in North Carolina.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, I will let you go, and I appreciate you being on. I wish you luck with your books. Do you have any last minute words of advice for any authors out there?
I'll just say what my mentor told me when I wrote my first book, Full Mortality, which I have to put in this little ad for me here. My first book was called Full Mortality. It was nominated for both an Agatha and a McCavity First Best Book Award. And I was going along and I wasn't sure what to do. And she gave me some advice. And then finally she just looked at me one day and she said, keep going. And that's it. Keep going. Don't give up. Keep going. And that's the best advice I could give anybody.
Great.
Once you start, keep going.
Right. Thanks, Sasscer. I appreciate you taking the time, and you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks so much.
Hi, if you enjoyed this episode of Discovered Wordsmiths, please support the author. Go to their website, go to Amazon, look them up, get the book. And if you click on the link that I have in the show notes, you'll also help support the podcast so I can keep the hosting and all the software I use and keep it running to help more authors. When I am recording this, we've got over 100 episodes, lots of authors. Go to the website, discoveredwordsmiths.com. Check it out. There's a lot of great authors, probably in some genre that you love. See what they have. Check out their books. That's what the point of the podcast is for. So people can discover new authors, find some new books they love, support the authors so they can continue writing. So please support them. And if you do like the podcast, if you've been thinking of podcasting or you're a writer, I've got some links also at the website. Click on those if you're interested in any of the software or services that I talk about. Everything that I have there is something I use. So I've got an affiliate link. Again, it's a little bit if everyone clicked on those, if they were going to get it anyway, it helps keep the podcast going. So let's all help each other out and discover more authors to read.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.